Yoy!
I'm not going to worry about your level of concern.
Yoy and double yoy!
We talking about
Twitter.
Triple yoy!
think of how stupid the average person is, and then realize half of them are stupider than that.
Quadruple yoy!
I don't send messages, I just make moves. I can't give you all the ingredients to the hot dog. You might not like it.
All right. Well, why don't we turn the music down? There. The dark soul of the off season is in full swing. It's not even February yet. I feel like it's been an eternity already, and it's not even February.
The winter abyss.
It's here. It's so bad that I've had extra time to watch the new CBS medical drama, Watson. Takes place in Pittsburgh.
Oh, does it? Oh,
Yeah.
okay. I was thinking you were going to the other medical drama that takes place in Pittsburgh, The Pit.
I know it's a great time to be into Pittsburgh medicine.
Okay. Now is it? I mean, I just heard Watson, and obviously, I assumed it's somehow a Sherlock Holmes paradigm.
It is.
or something.
It's the good old Watson that we all know.
Okay.
And he is now leading a team of medical detectives I don't know if it's specifically at Carnegie Mellon, but he did have a Carnegie Mellon tea in one of the scenes before he took it off in a gratuitous topless scene.
The dude's in good shape.
But they had to interview they were tracking down the pathogen or something, and they interviewed a local. She looked Hispanic. It wasn't necessarily clear.
Okay.
But she didn't have an accent, but then she dropped the word yins mid-script. I was like, no, a Latina, no accent, dropping yins. But
There's
hey.
something about a neutral accent saying yins that's
Yeah.
just lovely. Like someone very erudite saying, well, I hope yins find the pathogen. That is great.
So the off season has begun in vain, and not in vain.
The TV reviews are a sign of that, folks. That's how you can tell.
Lots to talk about.
Yes.
You know, to going on today, we've why have these Jim Rooney comments taken off now? We had him on the show a couple weeks ago and said the same thing. Why aren't we getting that same attention? We'll get to that. But
Well, we forgot to be outraged. Everyone
guess.
else remembered to do that.
And then later we will. I don't know if you've heard about the oneBURGH bandit who has it's like the Yinzer Banksy.
Whoa.
Who has put the site of the new Cleveland Brown Stadium is they're about to break ground, and it now says site of the future Ben Roethlisberger Stadium, because you do want to name it after a Cleveland legend. Anyway, I think I don't know if I can legally say I've tracked down the oneBURGH bandit, but
Okay.
I think I'm going to get to the bottom of it with a special guest coming up.
Oh, did you distort his voice like in the old?
Shoot! Well, this is no budget. We can't even afford a terrible towel to put behind us here on the great white wall of off-season abyss.
The firing squad.
The
wall.
infinity. I feel like we're like when they trap the guy in between dimensions.
Right, in the
We're in the
parallelogram.
Matrix.
Yeah.
We are in the we're in the Matrix. Okay. Well, enough caucus.
Yes.
Let's get to some of these hot takes. Starting with it was Art's time to shine this week, and so of course he's under fire. But what's best describes the afternoon in your opinion? Because we've got at Noah Strackbian just finished up a media session with President Art Rooney II. The sentiment was clear: disappointment, frustration, and change. Sounds like the Steelers' offseason will be a big one.
Okay.
Or does this sound more at Steelers fan _ Steelers tweeter? Summary of our fearless owner, Art Rooney, to its interviewer: we know things aren't working, and we're not going to do a thing about it. Okay, that sounds two different things to me. I don't-
Very much so. Now, obviously, Art is an attorney and was most likely a very good one, so he can certainly say things that can be interpreted many different ways, such as his comments about Pickens. But yeah, he's got a lot of potential. We don't know if it's going to work, but I would, having read the transcript myself, I would lean more towards the first comment, particularly because of the way the two sentences were structured. In that, yes, we're all. Art said, I'm frustrated. Tomlin's frustrated. There will be change. And when I hear the offseason will be a big one, that doesn't mean there'll be a huge amount of turnover. I think there'll be some, but it does mean it's a big one in terms of like, hey, we've got to get this right so that this rebuild does reach port.
Well, we've the Senior Bowl sessions have begun, so
Yes.
we can assume or can we proudly assume that since Arthur Smith and Teryl Austin are down there, they didn't lose their gig.
Yes.
Omar Khan is down there. He didn't lose his gig.
No.
So what's the next level of change then?
I mean, I don't know. You're looking at, I don't know. I mean, maybe they could eat Meyer's contract. They might not. We know Dunbar, because I never know whose contract is up or not.
Yeah,
and also,
Carl Dunbar is up for not being renewed.
yeah,
right?
that one. I mean, he certainly developed some good defensive linemen. I mean, the whole defense faded down the stretch. I'm not sure that's just him, but the Steelers are so weird about this in that, like, you won't hear anything, and in the middle of February they'll update the website and they'll be like, oh, here's a new wide receivers coach. Like like he gets a press conference or here's his big media availability. You just won't know until they just tell you on the site and some other nerd has to go find it.
That's possible. Okay, well, let's get into some of the nitty gritty.
Okay.
Art is under fire. I don't know. Sometimes it's Art. Sometimes it's Tomlin. Sometimes it's Art and Tomlin.
I mean, this is Art's time to really get it since he was the public face this week. I mean, usually, yeah.
I mean, he doesn't even take it public. Like, people were like, "Why doesn't he take it to the public?" Because he doesn't want to be the front face of the fan. Right? I don't think he wants to.
Not everyone wants to be Jerry Jones. Thankfully, precious few do.
But you can't escape the firing accuracy of at Iroquois Warrior Scar. Art Rooney owns the Steelers, but that doesn't mean he knows anything about football. His father, Dan, knew quite a lot. Art is no Dan. What exactly would Dan Rooney be doing now that Art wasn't drafting? I mean, Dan wasn't drafting players, was he? He wasn't evaluating players like that.
Dan used to be involved in that kind of stuff.
Used to
way
be,
back
yeah.
when. And I would assume that Art learned from him quite a bit. I assume, and perhaps this is being too overly optimistic, that if you're around something your entire life, you'd soak up quite a bit of it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's how far ever was Art away from the Steelers at any point in his life? Going to law school? Maybe. I don't know. But we don't know that Art has the same genes and, for lack of a better word, magic that the Chief and Dan did. But I'm not willing to say just yet that he doesn't.
Yeah, plus, Dan Rooney was doing things like getting the salary cap in football and
the Rooney
league-wide things. Yeah, the Rooney rule. But you can't sit there and say, because of Dan Rooney, we were able to draft Le'Veon Bell in the second round.
Right, and it's also not Art's fault that the Chiefs developed Patrick Mahomes. It wasn't Art that got the Pats Tom Brady. I'm willing to blame people when something's their fault, but a lot of things aren't.
Well, you it doesn't sound like you're on the same wavelength as at Cryptopotamus 34.
I'm probably not.
Breadface. Tag a billionaire and retweet. We need someone to buy the Steelers or nothing will change in our lifetime. Yeah, what? 10-7. Nothing will. Hey, I'll take 20 more seasons of 10-7. I'll take that. One of those has got to win a Super Bowl.
Or one of those has got to win a playoff game. I was going to say, but please take this energy, the Cryptopotamus, and direct it towards all those lovely misguided folks that are taking out billboards to get someone to buy the Pirates and Bob to sell the team. There is definitely an entire way to waste your time that can at least feel more productive with that.
Yeah, join. I think it's the terrible tailgate guys. I think are trying to. You might want to join their movement.
Yes.
These fair weather fans.
And that is just as good an idea as drinking with Le'Veon Bell or whatever else it is they want you to spend $80 on without.
Yeah. take my money to somewhere else. Take my to do a better tailgate, or just in the stadium.
Right.
I'm just I hear you.
I would
spend the
rather
same
have
money.
a $25 beer in the stadium than drink with those people and Santonio Holmes or something.
Well, the takes continue.
Yes, indeed.
Is this an Art take or a Tomlin take? At Chris Mueller PGH, Chris Mueller from The Fan. Art Rooney II answers to no one. Everyone else, Mike Tomlin included, answers to Art on one level or another. Art is the biggest issue. He's the guy doing the most by doing the least to hold back the franchise. If only we had Mark Cuban or some other, its ownership is holding us back from that Pouncey snap in against Cleveland,
What I think, and by the way, Mueller is somebody that in the last year has truly embraced being a hater to raise his profile. I don't know if you've noticed this. I've seen that decline on it. I think the way to interpret this tweet, and boy, I could be wrong about this, is that there seem to be a lot of people that were upset with Art in the past week, in particular at saying we need to run the ball or whatever comments he had about running the ball, and that's what holding the franchise back. I mean, in a hard salary cap league, there's only so many ways you can say that the owner is holding the franchise back, and one of them is by dictating organizational philosophy. And again, in a league where you're not going to have the second best quarterback in your own division, wow, I would like a team that runs the ball. Not that this team does, but the idea of having a team that runs the ball well and plays defense does seem like a good call.
Yeah, 10-3. No one was saying, "Oh man, Art's holding this franchise back at 10-3." After we,
Well, I even agree with Art that he said we're not a contender and we're not close. That was good. I was glad to hear him say that. That to me implies that this is going to be a big offseason of change. I mean, it's there haven't been a lot of changes yet. Well, no kidding. It's been 3 weeks, not even. I'm not sure that. I think that's kind of what they're coming around to. I don't mean to talk over this, but I don't know. Maybe this is where they're coming around to is that the roster isn't good enough for the coaching to matter yet. I kind of wonder if that's sort of the theory they're building up to as to like what really is going on here at
yeah.
I kind of wonder if that's sort of what the analysis is showing, maybe.
Yeah. When did they realize that? They didn't.
Right.
They didn't think that in camp. They didn't think that in September.
I don't think they thought it on Christmas Eve.
Yeah.
I think they thought it by the time Derrick Henry bursted through for the next, whatever the second or third big run was of that playoff game. It might have come through to them, but I can see that kind of maybe being okay. If this roster isn't good enough yet, then can we necessarily blame the coaching? I kind of wonder if that's where they're finding to. But again, we don't know any of this yet because it's so early in the offseason.
Okay, more of the Rooney takes, including at Mark Bowers 7. Mark Bowers, wish AR II would listen to his email inbox because these people emailing know a lot more about football than you. Also, it's very clear AR2 and Tomlin have no idea how to fix all the Steelers' issues, which are plenty, and won't make tough decisions.
The first part of this is amazing.
He said that. He said, and I'm thinking, who really has Art's email? Like,
right.
Is it just?
Oh yeah, there's no way. I mean, maybe there's like info@steelers.com where you can just leave a comment. I don't know who has Art's private email that is like, I'm going to give him a piece of my mind, billionaire. I have the personal email address of.
Yeah. But so he hears the noise. So how does he hear it? Is he listening to The Fan, or is it Twitter? I mean, I can't imagine Art is like, oh, look at these tweets that someone said.
Yeah, I mean, Art was going to go live on Instagram, and then he saw that everyone was so upset. No, I imagine more what he's talking about is, Art is at the games. So I imagine he's felt what it was like during the Chiefs game, during that Bengals game, and and I'm sure he most likely at the road games too. So he saw what it was like when the Ravens were running wild both times. So that was sort of how I took that comment as like, hey, I see the same thing as you. I'm also disappointed, and we're going to do something about it. What that is, I don't know yet, but it is still early.
Yeah, or is there some kind of internal email chain? They're like, oh, here's email of the week. hey, fire Tomlin or something, and then they all make a laugh at it or something.
It shows up at the internal Slack that they have. No, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's someone did that. It is weird. I mean, and I can see it being difficult to think of all the questions that you're going to ask Art in that thing. But like, they asked him about the Tomlin potential trade offer from the Bears, but didn't ask him about Teryl Austin. Like that's. I can see it being hard to get everything in, and you only have a limited amount of time. But geez, oh man. Like,
yeah, give me the Rooney emails about the Tomlin trade. And I'll pay your cover for this terrible tailgate. One more on Art at Tim Benz PGH. Tim Benz. Now up at Breakfast with Benz. Forget Mike Tomlin living in his fears. It's Art Rooney II we should be talking about. And the quote in the article is, Art Rooney is scared to death to fire Tomlin. He doesn't want to break the tradition of having 3 Hall of Fame coaches in 60 years or whatever it is.
I mean, this could be true, and it could be a fine thing. It could be fun. I imagine Art Rooney is scared to death to fire Tomlin, and that's not a bad thing, because there is a real legitimate fear, perhaps an overwhelming and most likely justified one, that if you fire Tomlin, not only are the results not better immediately, they're not better in the long run either. So yeah, I mean, I think where you take this take is wrong, but the idea that he's scared to fire Tomlin, yes, that's not a bad thing. You should be scared to potentially harm your franchise for little to possibly no gain.
Yeah, I mean, it could potentially go down as one of those, worst mistakes in NFL history,
Right.
firing a Hall of Fame coach or whatever.
Yes.
What I saw, someone had the stats. It's like Shula had 8 years, no playoff wins, but no one talks about Don Shula's. Remember that big drought he had in the 80s or something.
Well, I think they do talk about he didn't win a Super Bowl with Dan Marino. I mean, obviously there were some external reasons for that, the Niners dynasty and the Washington and then Dallas. I mean, it kind of moved from like one dynasty to a little blip of Washington to even the Giants in there and LT. There was always a reason that they didn't. But yeah, I mean, that's certainly a black mark against Shula. But yes, it's
is it though? I never hear anyone really talk about that.
I've heard. I did hear Marino say that he wouldn't have given up having 1 year of winning a Super Bowl for the whole career he did. But I mean, I remember at the time people thinking less of Shula and Schottenheimer and guys like that for not winning. But that was also in an era when at the time it was the AFC ever going to win again? I mean, there were some weird thoughts going around at the time.
I remember that. Okay, well, we've got some that are just directed at Tomlin. Enough of just the Art. Why shoulder Art of all the blame? Because my coach has tweets like at David Calling. Tomlin says changes on all levels, just talking out of his rear again. The standard has become the same old. This one, even you were a little excited last week about, was it changes? I guess the quote is changes on all levels.
Yes. I wanted to see some changes.
Can it be not necessarily public facing changes or something?
100%. It could be changes that very much aren't public facing. You just saw the Ravens brought in Chuck Pagano to be like a defensive assistant guy kind of thing, which the Steelers never do unless it's Brian Flores and literally no one else. But it could also be changes in terms of what responsibilities are delegated where. But then again, even Art kind of shot that down too. In terms of we're not bringing other people in. There will be changes. We're not going to say what they are yet, which I kind of get in terms of not wanting to, absolutely hamstring yourself in an interview. But it's there don't have to be significant changes now. But I mean, at some point, and not for a while yet, this team is going to have that feeling of, okay, this could work. Like, here's our plan for what this team is, and this could work. Colbert was always good about that. This past season, they were kind of okay about it, except for that fact of never getting a second wide receiver. And even then, there was always hey, this could work because we're going to trade for Christian Kirk till he got hurt, or the Brian Ayuk saga or something like that. So I think what a lot of us are reacting to now is that we're nowhere near, hey, this could work. Because there have been no changes of any kind that are visible. When those start to come around, legal tampering, whenever coaches start appearing or disappearing on the website like Stalin's commandants, then we'll start seeing some of that.
Well, I mean, let's not get dramatic.
Let's not get dramatic, right?
I was trying to think of somewhere someone just disappears and you don't hear about them. Frisman Jackson, I don't know. But yeah, that was probably not the best analogy on my part.
We'll see. I guess we'll see when we come to camp. How we can gauge what the changes were, or if they're, or as far as staffing, maybe.
Oh yeah, as far as I meant in total staffing, roster,
Yeah.
all of it. The plan of hey, this could work. But in terms of the staffing, yeah, we won't know that until. I know some of it. If, like I said, if they're going to do defensive line guy, but for the most part, we won't know how those responsibilities.
And anything like delegation, we'll never know.
Yeah.
Never know. What about this? Is this a point? Is this a good point? At Fanta Skippy, Jeffrey Benedict. Dan Rooney gave Chuck Noll a bonus after a 1-13 season. Why? Because he was a really good coach, and they could tell. As long as they believe Tomlin is a good coach, the results will not cause them to fire him. Is this a different way to say? Because sometimes I say, we want Tomlin despite the playoff losses. It's everything else in that he brings that makes the playoff losses tolerable, or makes it,
I think I could see that because Benedict's quote is almost word for word what Art said. He said, we felt, I still feel Tomlin's a good coach. I feel the players respond to the message. So, yeah, we're keeping him around. I mean, that's almost exactly what he said. So I think that's right. I think we have a good enough coach. The players still listen. We've worked with this guy for a while. We don't see the need to change. We're disappointed. He's disappointed. And I was glad to hear that they were disappointed. But so, yeah, I could see that all being within the same ballpark, saying a similar thing in different words. Sure.
And that kind of change doesn't necessarily. It's when you need a cultural change on a team that you fire your head coach or something. It's not that's the case. Some of these playoff losses are just been goofy games or whatnot.
Or they were blown out. I mean, they were just not competitive. And
everyone's like Tomlin's losing record in the playoffs or whatnot. But if you take back Ben's shoestring tackle in 2005 or whatever, then Bill Cowher is 9-10 in the playoffs. He has a losing record and no titles. So probably no Hall of Fame, maybe, or at least not yet.
Right. I mean, it's because then he still has a few years of Ben, and they weren't going to get rid of him then, and the Steelers probably win another one. But that's certainly not impossible. I mean, I think the idea, and I forget who said this, but it's a lot smart, and I realized you get rid of the coach when either A, the team is completely cratered and needs a fresh start, or B, the roster is better than the results. And that's why I could kind of have seen them moving on from Austin because, hey, you got this defense, these stars, all these guys, and it's only 8th. But it's also possible to say, hey, they were 8th because the offense was that bad, something else. So those are the two times I can see you get rid of the coach. Everything's falling apart, or the roster is better than what you're getting out of them. And I kind of think that the Rooneys kind of came to the point is I'm not sure this roster is better than what Tomlin's gotten out of them.
Yeah. That's I don't know how. I don't know.
I mean, but that makes sense. I mean, because I feel that also fits in with Art said too. Yeah, he hasn't lost the players; they're still listening to him. He's a good coach. He gets the message out, and these bums weren't going any further anyway. Could be the other. Not that they're bums, but I meant it's the way this team was constructed. It's not like they were. I mean, because that's the two ways to interpret. I'll shut up in a second. But that's the two ways to interpret them getting blown out in the playoffs. They're getting blown out because the other guys have outcoached them so much, and and all that, or they got blown out because the other guys are just that much better.
Yeah, the other guys might have been that much better.
Yes,
yeah,
just over and over and over and over again, which speaks to roster.
Or are we just forgetting that, like at Alex Kozora, last year the Steelers brought on 7 new coaches, new OC, positional coaches, assistants. I know it's frustrating, but that's why there isn't a ton of coaching changes. They just did it. We're only 1 year into this, into these contracts, and even after Matt Canada's 1 year, I remember Tomlin said, "Yeah, I think we all had some growing pains or something." So, if they're going to give Matt Canada the 1 year, I'm sure they're going to give
Oh, yeah. I wasn't one of the people that wanted to get rid of Arthur Smith. I mean, I just thought about the Teryl Austin thing again. Is this defense, are you getting everything out of this defense? And maybe their internal report said they were, just because the offense was also partially dragging it down. Not that that's what I thought happened in the playoff game, but still.
What if we're missing the target? Forget about like at O'Malley_Ken says, Kenny O, the Steelers don't need more coaches. They need better draft evals. Look no further than the last 7 number 1 picks. When you're not picking up 5th-year options, you've screwed the pick. Is that the way to judge a first-round pick?
I think that's where we're coming around to. I think that's where, I mean,
if they're not a career or at least a second contract.
Because, I mean, that's why you draft someone in the first round, so you get that extra year, so you have that second contract. I mean, that's as big a reason as any. I think that's when we're coalescing around. I mean, what is it? How many? They're left with, 3 or 4 draft picks from 2017 through 2021 or something like that? That in and of itself, you hear that stat, or I forget, it's something very close to that, then yeah, you could be like, that's a team that gets blown out if they get to the playoffs.
So is it the draft evaluations, or is it the player? Do we say players play, coaches coach? Do drafters draft, and then players?
Well, I think it all comes together. But I think what I always think of is that, and I think it's easy to forget this during this era, because I think about it then, but it wasn't then. Was that the idea was, hey, this was Ben or bust. And that's Najee. That's Freiermuth.
Yeah.
That doesn't explain Terrell Edmonds, but it does explain why you can never in a million years say the Steelers should have drafted Lamar, because Ben would not have tolerated that. So that's. I mean, there's been so many bad draft picks that did not work out during that time. But I mean, the ethos wasn't, hey, let's build this contender. I mean, let's build this team for the future. Let's build this team. It was, let's win now with Ben, and then the offensive line literally fell apart beneath him.
Even Edmonds started every game of his contract.
Right.
I mean, and then what did they give him, a 1 year after
gave
that?
Him 1 year, and
so is that a complete bust? That can't be a complete...
but he was not a first round pick, Val. I mean, that's the problem. I mean, that's the thing that we can say now in 2024. Like, that's what time grants you, is that we can say it definitively.
Should we? I guess the search is back on. Should we bring back?
I think you got to.
Should we bring back the song? The search is back.
Plus, you got to sing +3, which can't be easy either.
Well, there's a new spin. QB22 plus few. Where are you? We've got some work to do now. QB22 plus few. Who are you? We need some help from you now. You know we got a mystery to solve. Which QB do you want, gold and black? All right, this is the search is on for a QB. Well, it's year 3. I guess it's year 22, 23, 24. This is year 4 of the QB.
That
search
sounds about right. Yeah, Ben's last game was 2022. Yeah,
year 4 of the search is on, and the question from at Steelers Network. Time to see where the fan base is. If you had to bring back one of the starting QBs in 2025, who were you choosing? And I believe Art said one. He kind of more or less said one of them's coming back.
Yeah, he did.
And whose choice is that? Tomlin's or the agents?
Well, I imagine that's a discussion, but I mean, it's that Justin seems like the one with the better upside that is going to cost less, unless the Saints or somebody does something crazy. So yeah, I mean, I assume that's the likeliest, but I don't know.
Well, the poll result from at Steelers Network is Justin Fields 92.6%, Russell Wilson 7.4. Is that like, should I try to update that? Is that seems
that does seem particularly one-sided. Not impossible by any means.
Now, I'm fine with whoever they choose to give the contract to, but I think that is it obvious to no one else but me that Russell Wilson is the better? If we're trying to just win now, win in this year, Russell Wilson is the better quarterback. Is that possible?
I think it's certainly possible. I think the idea is if you bring Russ back, you need to build up the rest of the team around him. Like, the offensive line needs to be that much better to protect this older guy that can't move. The idea behind bringing Justin back is, okay, this guy has a lot more natural talent still to be exploited, and hopefully by his second year in our offense, he could do that. I'm with you. If you remember on this podcast, I was the one person that was like, let's get to Russ as quick as possible. possible, even when Justin was winning, even before the games that Justin lost. Not that they were necessarily his fault. There's no best answer here. I mean, I'm not sure either of them are really a franchise guy that can win the whole thing, but I can see the argument for, okay, everyone else has some superstar quarterback. Justin still may have a ceiling that reaches that high. Let's try for that, but that also goes against a lot of the Steelers' ethos of trying to do something other than just win right this second.
Well, here is the updated poll. It's actually dropped from 92.6% to 92.2%. A whopping wow! 9 out of 10 Steeler fans want Justin over Russell. So I'm a 7%er, I guess. I'm in the
I mean,
vocal but small minority.
It could also be the kind of thing, and you kind of alluded to it, that could be taken care of by factors outside of them. If the Raiders offered Russ a huge contract, if the Jets offer or Saints to Justin, then you're going to have the other one.
Well, does this change your mind? At Mic'd Up Sports 1, Mike Nicastro cannot wait for Steelers to use Russell Wilson was a Pro Bowl quarterback line to justify keeping them. He's a Pro Bowler. 2,482 yards. He might have been a Pro Bowler in 1955.
Yes. Well, it's also, I mean, that I tried to think of how many guys must have dropped, and then I realized I don't have time today. So that's the Pro Bowl. I mean, I remember we joked about it at the time with your Pro Bowler Huntley when he beat the Steelers with the Ravens, and that had to be 8 or 9 QBs down, and I'm sure Russ is something similar.
In that same vein, what about Isaac Seumalo? He was PFF's 26th ranked guard. Did he have a Pro Bowl season? You know what? Around week 10, they were taunting stats like he hadn't given up a sack. But I don't know.
Well, like everything else, it fell apart at the end of the season. I mean, Seumalo was up and he was down, and he missed the first month with an injury, which didn't help the team, even though they won those games. But yes, it was a season that was up and down, and I could see them, bringing in someone in or cutting Seumalo, but I also see them hanging on to him too. As the older guy on a younger line, that's not the worst idea.
Okay, well, what about option C in the quarterback room at Steeler Nation? Dan Orlovsky says the Steelers' first call this offseason should be to Los Angeles Rams for Matt Stafford. If Russ, say no to Russ, say no to Justin, but get the trade to Matt Stafford for what would that would be?
I have no idea what that would take. My thought is they should run a poll, which is a longer conversation. Let's trade for Matt Stafford or let's trade for Mike Tomlin. Which of those was a longer? I mean, I don't see why the Rams would do this at all. The Rams were just in a play. If they won a playoff game against a much better team, and it's kind of on the road, that weird game in Arizona, and why would they move on from this? The Rams, I mean, I think McVay's the best coach in the league. That guy just wins with whatever. He finds the best receiver in the 4th round. He got the defensive rookie of the year probably. I mean, they just find ways to win. So I have no idea why they'd move on from Stafford before they had somebody in place.
All right. So, what about someone like Sam Darnold? Would that be? I mean, Rooney kind of said not someone from the outside.
No, because you're getting the same thing as. I'm not sold Darnold's any better than Russ. I'm just not, and I think he would cost even more than Russ would. So the Darnold option. I'm basing a lot of that on the playoff game, but that's how you do this. He looked real bad in that playoff game, and they have a good line. And the Steelers, whatever they do, are not going to have Justin Jefferson and Addison or the big tight end. So I mean, that was enough for me to be out on Darnold.
Not good enough.
Yeah, not good enough. Let's go to Plan C, D, at Tony Pauline. Tony Pauline, day 2 news and notes from the Shrine Bowl. He talked to Joe Flacco sources, who says that Flacco could be in play. The way it sounds is like Flacco wouldn't mind going to Pittsburgh.
Right. Flacco would like to have a job. That's what I got out of it. And honestly, if you bring back Russ, Flacco's a fine number 2. I mean, I assume the Steelers are probably going to draft a quarterback on early day 3, if not sometime on day 2, just to have a younger guy in there. So I'm assuming, but I mean, having Flacco as the backup is not the craziest thing. I'm just not sure he'd be the backup for Fields, just off of, Rooney saying, hey, we'd like to have quarterbacks that are similar kind of style. And unfortunately, Flacco's style at this point is a lot closer to Russ. But I wouldn't mind the Flacco as a backup thing, just because I think the Colts didn't make the playoffs for like a game or so. They wouldn't have done that if they didn't have Flacco on that roster.
I'd take that room. Russ and Flacco. It's
and a young, and I don't know, the kid from Ohio State, something like that. I mean, it would be something like that probably. Yeah.
Bring back your starter jackets. It's throwbacks with the old guys. Or compared to what would the other option be? Fields and
Jalen Milroe. No, I mean they'd go find some other running guy. Maybe Huntley's still available. They would find some other veteran running quarterback. I don't know I think the phrase always gets this used around this time. The Jacoby Brissett type.
Yeah,
I think Brissett
Jacoby
is still
Brissett.
around.
Yeah.
Yes, so that I think that.
Well, we have even more. Well, this is what got me mad. All these headlines about the Jim Rooney. I don't know. He went on some podcast. Yeah. Well, you know what? Before he went on some podcast and made news, he was on our podcast and made news. I thought, or at least said this. He didn't have the same quote, but it was very similar.
Close.
Anyway, making news on @TribSports, Tribune Review Sports. Mm-hmm. Tim Benz. Jim Rooney's explanation for playoff slump, a sobering reality check of Steelers' lowered standards. Mm-hmm. Our standards are, down, and here's a Rooney to tell us exactly how, which I thought was, Kyle did that first. Okay. But here's the quote from Rooney on this other podcast. I don't want to get into excuse making, but the reality is we outperformed the NFL mean at a greater rate than just about any other team for the last 25 years. Not exactly 6 Super Bowl trophies, but he's statistically true. Like we outkick the coverage every year for and Steeler fans still want to moan. What do you?
Well, I mean, that's it's a tough argument to make to the people right now. I think that's why Art's comments, as much as they upset people, he did make that line about my inbox is full. This is very much the opposite of my inbox is full. This is it's after it's after a playoff game where the team was blown out after 5 games in which they were only competitive one of them. It is I could see it being very tough to hear. Don't you understand? You've been above average for a very long time.
Outperform the mean. It's that could be a shoe company brand. If Just Do It didn't work, outperform the mean.
Outperform the mean.
But you know what? Outperform the mean gets you in the playoffs every year, and then the only way you can win the playoffs is if you outperform the mean. So I kind of dig the philosophy.
We should get those shirts.
It's not quite unique things do unique things, but.
Well, I think that's what they run into in the playoffs. The other teams have the unique things, the quarterback, the Derrick Henry, that's just because Tomlin's idea is right. It just hasn't, the execution hasn't come through. The other guys have been more unique in things and in person.
All right, how about we do a little con season? And we'll start with @Blitzberg quoting the Saron of
the Hall of it's in some Hall of Fame of some kind. Ed Bouchette.
Oh, really?
I mean, some kind. I mean, Ed was a lot of guys are in the Hall of Fame in part because Ed. He was Steelers media for decades. I mean,
well, Ed Bouchette says the Steelers should probably consider trading T.J. Watt, George Pickens, and Minkah Fitzpatrick. What's T.J. going to be this year? He's coming up on 31. Then you're going to give him a new contract. Yada yada.
And how close are you to appreciating the value for what? These help you get to a Super Bowl? Do I want to get a Super Bowl or do I want to stay a Steeler for the rest of my life? They're not going to. I don't think the Steelers are going to, which is a good point to come around to.
So what would you get for George Pickens, T.J. Watt, and Minkah Fitzpatrick? You'd have to be able to get you trade for a quarterback, right?
Right. And, I mean, I know what you'd get is absolutely not the value. I mean, in any trade, when you trade the best player, you never get enough back in hopes that you like to think I'll get a bunch of draft picks. But as soon as you trade any of these guys, you have to immediately go about getting a younger version of those guys.
Yeah,
so in the end, you're always chasing it. Now, that said, I'm open to a trade of George Pickens. I'd like to hear what's available and what's out there. Now, you have to use those resources to get George Pickens and or some kind of super quarterback, or maybe use one for the other. But that's a different situation, because I don't know if you can win with a guy like George. I just don't. I mean, I was the showing up late to the Christmas game thing kind of freaked me out a little bit, I will say. So that so I could see the trading George. I mean, the trading TJ and Minka thing's a bit ridiculous. But I mean, this is the grown-up version of the argument of, not that you've wasted these guys' careers, but they could be great Steelers that will never have had real postseason success due to the time in which they played and the team in which they played on.
If you're trading Pickens this year, then you're giving up on. You're saying, okay, we're cutting. Like, we already know we're not. There's no chance we're signing him after.
The Deontay Johnson trade was last year.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I think the band is trying to. We got to get to our guest. Well, but first, I think the band is trying to take the field. Is that possible, or will I have to do it in post? All right, last thing here. We've got the breaking news tweet this week from @KDKA Radio. A hilarious sign hung up near the proposed site of the new Browns home, Ben Roethlisberger Stadium. That's right, we've got the signage is up. The stadium isn't here for a few more years, but the signage is up. Future home of Ben Roethlisberger Stadium, courtesy of oneBURGH Construction. So to get some answers here, we went to the head of oneBURGH. Brian is here with me. Brian, thanks for joining What Yin's Talking About.
Yeah, Kyle, thanks for the invite, man.
So what is, I hear that you have nothing to do with this Ben Roethlisberger Stadium sign. How did you find out about this?
Yeah, I was alerted. I operate a page called oneBURGH, and we're Pittsburgh's largest social media network. We get a lot of messages every day, and I got a picture that showed this sign, Ben Roethlisberger Stadium, oneBURGH Construction. It got our attention, then a video surfaced of people driving by it, and we just want people to know that we do not own oneBURGH Construction, and we have absolutely 100%, even though we launched it on our own page, any idea at all, even though the people wearing the luchador masks may have a similar shape of face to me. We have no idea, even if the car tracks match my truck and the footprints match the size of my shoes. We have no idea, Kyle, how those came about. And we're appalled that anyone that looked like me, drives a truck like me, has the shoe size like me, would do something like this.
So these are just rogue actors taking up your banner. It was some kind of splinter cell on the north side of Cognac Lake or something.
It was disgraceful. We are outraged. And we told KDKA this. We are looking into it deeply to find out how this happened. And to the person out there, they might even be listening now. To the person out there who did this, we will find you and we will bring you to justice. We can't be putting signs that honor the great Ben Roethlisberger and his illustrious career of slamming the Cleveland Browns into the ground. We cannot be celebrating that by putting signs up on fences right on Snowden Lane in Cleveland or in Brook Park.
Well, all these stadiums have these corporate names like, yada.com stadium, but they got to have a nickname. And so I think the Ben is a perfect nickname for the stadium,
Yeah, I'm not against the message, Kyle. I just want everyone to know that this was a horrible thing that was done, and we cannot let this ever happen until those naming rights really happen. We'll do everything in our power to make sure that it never happens again. including we would never encourage anyone to take down that sign because those people may think that another sign even bigger than the first sign would need to go up if they take down that sign.
Wow. Is that a warning or is that a threat?
No. That's what I'm worried about, that someone listening right now, maybe even talking to you, would take them as taking that sign down, take that as a message to put up an even bigger Ben Roethlisberger Stadium sign. We can't have that, Kyle. We cannot have that.
It's mass hysteria. It's not, this is civilized times. This is not the time.
That's right. That's right. This is we're in a civilized world. This cannot happen. This is not the community that our forefathers wanted to have. We're just putting up rogue signs. And again, whoever used our logo, if they are listening, you will be found. What's going to happen? We don't know.
To be determined. So stay tuned. You want to keep up with oneBURGH on all things to see the future of the sign. What do you have going on at oneBURGH for the off season?
Well, we still have our weekly podcast to go on. Ed Troop is our sports director who's on there. He just got off with a great interview with Andrew Stockey. And we've just got confirmed that the chairman of the Pirates, the great Bob Nutting, will be joining oneBURGH to talk about the future of the Pirates. So Andrew Stockey, the chairman, Robert Nutting will be on with us. And just to look for all and everything that's going on in Pittsburgh. That is oneBURGH.
Well, you heard it here. Keep up with oneBURGH. We will get to the bottom of the Ben Roethlisberger Stadium sign. And maybe who knows? Maybe it sticks. Maybe there's nothing they can do about it now. Dibs. I think.
Yeah, right. We got someone has dibs, and we're still looking for those people who are identifying themselves as the oneBURGH bandits. Those people are criminals, and they need to pay.
Keep your eyes out. It's an all points bulletin. Brian,
yes.
Thanks for your time and congrats.
Hey, Kyle,
with everything.
you know what it's a lot like? Remember when OJ was looking for the real killer?
Oh yeah.
Everyone in America unified to find the person who did those crimes. And it's going to be very similar to that. We are looking for not the real killer, the real sign stealer. The
search is on. Brian, thanks for your time, man. Go to oneBURGH for all your Pittsburgh needs.
Thank you, Kyle.
All right. I think that solves the mystery of the oneBURGH bandits.
Case closed.
I kind of consider it the Yinzer Banksy. I don't know if that's a bridge too far.
Well, in all honesty, I think some Browns fans would even agree with that because all the Browns fans I ever talked to said, "Why are we putting the stadium in the suburbs? Like you deserve this for having a domed stadium far from downtown Cleveland. If you invite that kind of badness into your life, such things will occur to you."
And even though technically Baker actually does have the most wins, didn't Baker?
I think
technically
he eventually
pass?
did because I think he went back and and obviously like a lot of Steelers fans, it tend to soften on Baker once he got out of Cleveland and became a survivor in other places.
That's all it takes to get out. Yeah, right. Mm-hmm. Just like Flacco. Now I'm like,
right.
Bring Flacco
Absolutely,
on board.
Fine
Yeah,
with Flacco. Yes, at 100%.
Well, I think
that's what we've been talking about.
That is what we've been talking about. It is. What, 4 months until the draft? 3 months until the draft.
It's even a month and a half to legal tampering. Like this is the time when nothing is happening. Like this is it's we're gonna have combine nonsense soon. Shrine Bowl, we'll have more about it next week. But oh my word,
yeah. If I get my act together, we'll have our third annual Steelers March Madness. And should I announce this year's theme potentially unless I change my mind?
Well, maybe wait till February just so we have something to talk
You're right.
about.
It's not even February yet. So get ready for that. The return of Steelers March Madness. And big thanks to oneBURGH for Brian for zooming in and for bringing some levity into the dark off season. You can follow me on. Is TikTok still around? I'm still on it. I don't know.
There you go. Then that's good enough for me.
I'm at Kyle Kreis. Greg, how about yourself?
Alas, I'm on Instagram at Greg Benevent, B as in boy, E-N-E, V as in Victor, E-N-T.
Please, iTunes review. I bet people must turn this off by the time we come to this part because I'm always just like iTunes review and it's never there. We need some iTunes review for the algorithm because that way our Jim Rooney interview is the exclusive making news. We were before, or maybe just these other sites don't want to credit us because they're like, oh, these guys are so small and irrelevant. Like Steelers Depot.
But you think they'd be outraged at us defending the team? Like that there's a market for being outraged at you and to a lesser extent I.
Well, I would love to tap into that market. Any market, yeah. Okay. All right. Well, until next week, keep listening to your coach, please. Who says,
Be their best selves. That's going to be required.
Stay in school.